Hi, my name is Abigail Dawson. KnowNative is a web application for learners of traditional Chinese to improve their reading comprehension through studying native language texts. This project is inspired by two core philosophies of language learning. First, that learning is most sustainable when we are interested in the content we're using to study. And second, the more we learn from content produced by real native speakers, the more easily we develop natural fluency in our target language. KnowNative was designed to move learners away from dry textbook material by allowing them to import their own texts and articles that they're interested in studying. During this presentation, I will walk through the main features of the project and also dive into the code and talk about some of the interesting functionality going on behind the scenes. Finally, I'll talk about some of the challenges and limitations of this project and discuss plans for future development. When you log in, you see this dashboard page. It includes a list of all the texts and articles that you've uploaded, as well as some stats for how many you've read, archived, and words that you've saved. You can filter your texts by favorites or by archived. For the purpose of this demonstration, I am going to recreate this article here just to demonstrate some of the features of the app. So I have an article that I'm going to use just for demonstration. Just going to paste in the title and a couple paragraphs to demonstrate. For this demonstration, I'm not going to provide a source, but you could if you wanted to. So I'll add it. I'll go ahead and add it to my favorites, and I'm going to click into it. On this screen, I can see the text that I've just imported, and first I'd like to show the study feature. This feature of the application relies on a Chinese tokenizer dependency. This is an algorithm that has been written to handle the parsing of Chinese text into individual words. As you can see, if you didn't know, Chinese language does not use white space to separate words. That's the job of the Chinese tokenizer package. To take this text and break it into words, what it does is it looks through the Chinese English dictionary, pulls that information from the Chinese English dictionary, and uses that to divide the words up. I'm using that functionality to break the text into a component for each word so that they can be clicked on by the user to grab their meaning and pronunciation. So I can go ahead and click on some words here. Once I have some words saved here, they add to these inline annotations, and then I can also study from a deck of flashcards and choosing which I want to see on the front and whether or not to show pronunciation. And I can study these flashcards here. Right now this is a pretty rudimentary implementation of flashcard app, but there's definitely room for improving the algorithm for a spaced repetition system or more customization options. On this Translate tab, we can see that the text is broken down by sentence. So this is just some logic that breaks up the Chinese sentence every time it encounters a final punctuation mark, and the user can show or hide translations for full sentences like this. Finally, over on the Read tab, if the user feels that this text is a little bit too tough, they can click this Feeling Stuck button to generate an easier version of the text. So go ahead and click Generate. And this is actually using OpenAI API technology to generate an easier version of the text. It is a bit limited in its ability to work with non-English texts, so sometimes the results vary. But as you can see here, it's come up with what it considers to be a slightly simpler version. I'm going to go ahead and save it. When I do that, I can see the easier version alongside the original. I can also expand this if I want to see just the easier version, or if I want to just read the original again, or I can just have them side by side to compare. Those are the main features of the app, and now I'd like to talk a bit about the code. One of the things that makes this application unique is the ability to generate an easier version of your text using AI technology. This is the function that's handling the communication between the front end that the user is interacting with and the back end where a request is being made to the GPT 3.5 Turbo model. This function takes in the content of the text that the user is looking at when they make their request by clicking that Generate button. It's prompting the GPT model with this prompt here that says, using traditional Chinese characters, generate an easier version of the following Chinese text suitable for a 5th grade reading level. Here, I have just selected a 5th grade reading level to approximate an easier version of the text, but this same model could be used to generate text at different levels or do some other interesting things to provide some study tools for the learner. Something that I struggled with is the lack of this model's ability to work with non-English languages. So sometimes, despite adding this to the prompt, it does return simplified Chinese characters, and sometimes the text just is not that much easier than the text that it is taking in. Sometimes that has to do with the actual difficulty of the article that's being imported, but just the accuracy and quality of the response really varies. Another thing that I would like to improve in development this here is my text page component that holds the flashcard activity. This flashcard activity right now is a very simple implementation. Here the cards are being marked as correct or incorrect, and it is arranging the cards accordingly, deciding whether you see them again, updating the count that you see at the bottom of the screen. But there's a lot that can be done with flashcards. It wasn't really the focus of my development of this app, so I didn't expand on the flashcard algorithm yet, but a lot of research has been done on spaced repetition for learning vocabulary or just learning concepts in general, which is the idea that the more often you get a card wrong, the more often you'll see it in your flashcard deck, and then the more often you get it right, the less often you'll see it. It's an algorithm that determines how often and when you see these cards, and it's a really beneficial system to use for flashcards. So I would like to incorporate that kind of system into my app, as well as having the user be able to study from all of their flashcards or make their own decks and not just be limited to the words that they've saved for each text. Finally, just to discuss some of the challenges that I faced and plans for future development. KnowNative currently only supports traditional Chinese because it's relying on that Chinese tokenizer package, which parses the Chinese text into words based on the Chinese English dictionary. I would like in the future to be able to use this kind of technology to expand to other languages, but I would need to take a different approach to handle white space and word separation differently depending on the language. Also, I'm not sure that OpenAI is the optimal AI to use for this particular project just because it doesn't specialize in foreign languages. At least the model that I'm using does not. So that's something to consider going forward. And also the spaced repetition is something that I would like to implement as well. Finally, my biggest takeaway working on this project, I had only studied React for 2 to 3 weeks before starting this project, and when I started, I really didn't fully understand the possibilities that were available to me using React. So when I started planning the project, I hadn't really thought of all the features because I just didn't know what was possible. So in my code, there's a lot of reorganizing that needs to happen, a lot of refactoring and just arranging components differently to make things more modularized and better for scalability. So these are things that I would like to work on in future development, and also just a big takeaway from working on this project. Thanks for listening to my presentation, and I will link the deployed site as well as my GitHub for this project in the description. Thanks.